Bible can only be one Bible. And at last, the Bitcoin become the Bible. Its expectation tell people that the finance will be changed in the next several decades. And this is kind of success, at least two narrative, like 2000 years ago, the Bible preaching in the market, right? But after the preaching period, you have to move on to the practical period, which is the second growth curve. You cannot just tell the story, make the narrative, do the Ponzi, and collect the bubble. You cannot do that, right? There must be practical, down-to-earth, real-world things.
All right, welcome back to the Block Fuel Podcast. We have Gary Yang from Cicada joining us at the end of RWA Day, but in Denver, the start of ETH Denver. You've traveled a fair amount of ways. We were just talking about, Singapore flights, some of the longest in the world.
Well, yeah, it is.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I come from Singapore. I take these flights for like 6 times last year. I love that because the longer that the travel you've got, the more differentiated things that you've got, so that you can find information and symmetry, and then you will create more things. So something like that.
Really? So you're a 16-hour flight if it's from San Francisco, or it's a 20-hour flight from Newark.
Yeah.
It's like you're sit alone. Let's say you're obviously a very active investor, you're running a company. This is just a really good time for you to like pause and think and like digest a little of the information you do daily.
Yeah, actually it is. And sometimes I write some of the articles on air, and then sometimes I would take the rest because there's so many meetings and so many noise. You have to calm down yourself. Yeah, the flight is the right time and position that you can take that.
Yeah. So the best thinking we do know happens in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
Like people always talk about, the best idea I have is in the shower, because you can't do anything else. You shouldn't be playing with your phone. You shouldn't be doing anything else. You should be typing.
Yeah.
So similar concept. But from your background, you've invested in Multicoin Capital as like an LP and many other like very like front running funds that have been at like really driving the industry forward. And as part of that experience, you were looking for something use case similar to Cicada Finance, but it wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that drove your team to come out with Iris, co-founder. She's coming by in a little bit to start Cicada. Could you walk us through like what was that initial problem? What was the big problem that you guys were like, hey, we're starting?
Yeah, to be honest, we are forced to jump into the market. But we like that. And according to the experience, actually, I invest Web2, Web3, fund, venture capital. And now we say that we go from venture capital to venture building. To be honest, Web3 is totally different from Web2. And nowadays, the world environment, not only for the geography, political environment, but also for the economy environment, actually it's totally different from 10 years ago. For venture capital, we need a very stable, steady environment over there. And now it's different. We cannot say that it's chaotic, but there's much uncertainties over there. So we found out that the new things will come out, but we have to run very fast and we have to jump to the market ourselves. According to the last 5 years, we invest direct or indirectly to the funds, protocols, projects. But we found out most of the projects in crypto in the last cycle, what we call is the first growth curve. Actually, they just chase the momentum and consensus. And during the day, actually today is very special because the price of Bitcoin went down to something like 80K. And actually it's suspicious to the consensus whether we will still go with the first growth curve, which is consensus, expectations, all of this. And that the first growth curve is really like preaching the Bible. You talk to a narrative, talk a story, and then you follow the trend, you get a consensus, and the price go up in the bull market, and then bubble collapse. So these things actually turn over and over again for 4 cycles, and now it is the turning point of that. And to the last 5 or 4 years, we find out that this kind of consensus cannot last long. It must be a turning point. The phenomenon is that not many VC or protocols is profitable, even if some of the protocol and project get listed on the biggest CEX, but still they're not profitable enough because their lack of consensus. And the other thing is that the total market cap actually is only, we say that it's a curse, it's only $3 trillion US and cannot go beyond of that. There's a book called It's Across the Chasm, and now it is the chasm. because all of the innovator and the early adopter actually get into the market already to price in. But we need a new narrative. It's not a narrative. We need a new curve and momentum for the second curve growth, which is very important. And we found out that the last cycle, including funds and product projects, not many entrepreneur or projects can do the second growth curve momentum to put it up, to pump it up. So we need experienced and professionals getting to more experienced people and professional guys get into the market and to push up, press the button and push up the market in the next cycle. So this is the reason why we do that. And yeah, there's this hard work combined together with the narrative, but we have to do that.
Yeah. And you mentioned crossing the chasm. Really. It's like the people that are in crypto digital assets right now, it's like they're already exposed to it. They already have their investments. They're, have chosen their tribes.
Yeah.
But we need fresh capital, right?
Yes.
It's very PvP, like player versus player, people trading against each other, but you really need fresh capital. And as we've seen and talked about, like on our show, has been a lot of people's introductions to it has been like, say, the Trump meme coin that was launched, and 80% of the supply was controlled by the developers or, Trump administration or, his team involved with that. And it's not a good way to onboard, people outside the industry. And so really what you're looking at as someone that has seen hundreds, I think, hundreds of projects you've invested in either directly or through a fund, is that like you really need to find more sustainable things, not get away from like, say, like the meme coins that are very value extractive, and find something that people can trust and believe in, to like take it to that next level.
Yes.
Actually, 10 years ago, actually it's 12 years ago, when I invested Web2, traditional venture capital, I say that I'm the value-chased investor or a real value investor. But it seems turned to a joke when the last 5 and 6 years, because in a crypto last cycle or the cycle before, it's totally about narrative, story, consensus, expectation. So it's not very similar to the real value things. But now the first cycle, the first growth curve actually come to an end. I mean that ask a question to the public last month. It's about whether do you think the dollar Trump, it's a beginning or the end of a consensus, of a narrative, of me, actually. Yeah. I think we cannot say this end, but it's a result, or it's kind of a turning point for that. Because the first growth curve, actually, it's just like I said, it's like preaching a Bible. But the second growth curve, you have to put something practical, down to earth, real work, real value, real application. So this is actually a big turning compared with the last cycle. So that's why we have to jump into that. And there's many difference will happen in the market. And the market cannot be very compatible with that. And there is a big volatility during the meantime. Actually, we call it kangaroo market, right? It's a giant over there. But it means that the consensus volatile quite a lot. And we have to move from the original last cycle consensus to the new one, which is not very easy. And for this year, actually, we definitely find out that we have to move our interest from the traditional things to real work things, real application things, including PayFi, including real world asset, or which we call this RWA, or real yield asset, real user things. And this turning actually would take time. So we're not suffering for that pain, and will take some months or 1 year. So we're not in the middle of that.
Yeah. And so for kind of bringing this to, your ultimate North Star and your purpose, you're seeing a lot of protocols that, yes, like have been providing some sort of return, but it's usually based on diluting the token or producing more of the same token. And it's not, it goes back to the fundamentals of, what is the actual like net new value being produced. And now we're starting to see, okay, hey, we actually need to have consumer apps that have users that are bringing in fresh capital.
Yes.
And we'd love to kind of get into your idea of real yield, and that's where we're breaking down like, hey, this isn't some, monopoly money, which is just recycled and or produced more of that pays for something. But it's like, oh no, this is someone that's paying rent to a real estate because, real estate apartment, a real estate venture, because they want to live there. And it's, thousands of years old, that whole concept. You guys are looking at just the primitive base layer of like, hey, what can we build off and how can we enable other people to get like a trusted, established real yield off of their like business?
Yeah, this is it's a good question, and actually, it's not the way that we think that we have to prove something or we have to show something to the public, but actually we are pushed by the market. And last month, actually, I have got a LP meeting in Salt Lake City, and I was shocked when I talked to a Nigeria entrepreneur, and he said that for the population of 230 million population over there, more than 50% of the people have already used crypto payment over there. So it's like it's a very big number. And
Massive number, yeah.
Massive number.
Yeah.
And a similar thing happened in India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and many of the South Asian countries. And I mean that this trend actually grow very fast and faster than we thought. In the meantime, that everyone concerned about where can we find the next meme, where can we find the next consensus, whether there will be a new thing that can support our price of the Bitcoin or the market. But at the same time, the real growth actually happened everywhere. And just we didn't know that. The information asymmetry now in the world actually is huge. So we don't have to worry about where can we find out that or how can we prove that. We don't need to do that because the market will prove to ourselves. And the whole market, I mean that including the economic market and the financial market, actually, it's now experiencing an earthquake during these several years. I mean that the financial system actually is a kind of new system generation and what happened over there. And we cannot resist that. And so that many countries' policy and compliance and regulation need to change because of the force pushed by the market. And we will find out that this growth curve will be very exponential model. So I think that the 2025 will definitely be the time that of this change, and this change will soon enough to change the attitude and the momentum of the market, and we'll find out that soon, because that number is grow very fast, faster than we thought.
Yeah. So you mentioned like Nigeria, with like Lagos, massive city, most people don't know has almost as many people as like 10 American cities combined.
Yeah.
And you mentioned India and Bangladesh and all these, spread across the globe. People say that math is the universal language, right? Is finance the second universal language? Like, because it seems like people kind of come down into this conclusion or come to this like end, language of like, hey, here's the yield I should get for taking the risk on like lending out my property, or here's the yield I should get for like giving capital to someone to go build a startup.
Yeah.
1 in 10 startups fail. So like this is like the 20% I expect. Is that kind of been your experience of just like you surprisingly see financial markets develop in different countries pretty similarly?
No, actually it is not.
Okay.
It's
Let's
quite
learn.
different. Yeah, it's totally different from each one. And I mean that the country actually, for now, what is the situation that actually we experience for now is the big turning point in history. I mean that is really similar to the situation before World War One. And many countries actually have got different ideas, opinions, and religions or belief on management, governance, and finance things. And I think the different country will use different way to move to the next generation, which is we call, no matter it's a crypto or digital currency things. And during the meantime, each of the country actually will experience very different situation for their own market. And for example, like I remember a very important thing that 10 years ago, it's like 11 years ago, there's an entrepreneur in China say that China actually developed the Web2. At that time, there's no Web2, this not. And they say that it's the internet. And China actually developed internet at the same time, parallel together with the industries. But this is different from Western countries, because Western countries developed for the industry and then come to the internet. And just because of this, the situation of the industry in China is totally different. There will be a new business model, like a TikTok, like many things. And now for Africa, for South Asia, experience a very similar thing. It's a new paradigm for Web3 together, parallel together with other industries. For example, like there are many people over there never have got a bank account, have got no idea about credit, and don't need to accumulate their credit for paying something. But this is the thing that the new thing will happen. It's the soil and grow the new grass, right? So at their environment and market, Web3 will grow very fast, faster than we saw. So we found out that, okay, the payment will be new, the yield will be new, because no matter the real application for finance or the yield of asset or how we can make the asset management is totally based on the demand of market, which from people, right?
Yeah.
And they need that. They do the application every day. They need the use. They want the sum of the growth for their wealth, so that they need yield, right? So the new kind of asset management is totally different from the traditional way that we learned from Wall Street or from the traditional professional finance. I mean that from the pump fund and GMGN, we can find out that the new generation of finance is totally different, or even the definition of a finance, the index, some of the important numbers, actually, it's totally different, actually. So there will be new kind of currency funds, new kind of pay loss, new kind of protocols, and it will happen. So we call this generation will be protocol asset management generation, and which is driven by the protocols. So new protocols about DeFi will happen everywhere. It's like a new generation innovation over there. We find out that today, actually, SEC have launched a new policy that will drop off the lawsuit to Gemini. And yesterday is to Uniswap, right? So new things happen every day. And each of this kind of unlock will push the innovation very fast than we thought. So I find out that why I say that is very similar to the situation before World War I. I didn't mean that it must be a war over there, but it must be a big change over there. No matter the way of the finance, but also for many of the industries, there will be big change.
Yeah.